The moment my wife stood up at my birthday dinner and clinked her glass, I thought she was about to give a heartfelt toast. Instead, she cleared her throat, smiled at the guests, then dismantled me like I was a punchline. To Nathan, she began the man who thinks running spreadsheets and grilling on weekends qualifies as a personality. Laughter, tight smiles. I felt the heat crawl up my neck as she kept going, each joke sharper than the last, mocking my career, my hobbies, even how I laughed. I sat there frozen, every cell in my body screaming to disappear. My daughter looked down at her plate. Her lover. He smiled from across the room like he owned the table. I didn't shout. I didn't even finish my drink. I just stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the woman I built a life with, the family that betrayed me, and the version of myself that tolerated it all. That night, I didn't just leave the party. I left everything. Quietly. And in that silence, I took back my power. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now grab a cozy seat, maybe a cup of coffee or tea, and prepare yourself for a tale that will captivate your heart from beginning to end. Let's begin. It was supposed to be just a dinner, nothing extravagant. That's what Callista had insisted on. Low-key, she said. Simple. I should have known better. When she said simple, she meant curated. When she said dinner, she meant a public spectacle staged to look effortless. And when she said it was about celebrating me, it never was. The venue was a private dining room at the Bayview Pavilion overlooking the San Francisco skyline. Everything was beige and gold, the lighting, the table settings, the staff uniforms. Hand-picked guests sipped craft cocktails, most of them more aligned with Callista's world than mine, tech investors, gallery owners, boutique fund managers. I recognized a few faces from charity galas we used to sponsor. A few still gave me polite nods, though most gravitated to the louder side of the table where Callista held court. I hadn't seen my daughter Soraya in almost a week. She gave me a soft smile when I arrived. Lennox was seated right beside her, too close. That should have been my first red flag. He used to be my consultant. Now he was simply there, uninvited by me, but welcomed by Callista, with her usual obliviousness or perhaps precision. Halfway through the entree course, Callista clinked her glass with the edge of her ring and stood. Her diamond caught the light. I assumed she was about to toast. She smiled, lifted her flute, and began. To my darling husband, Nathan, she said, who's always been there working late, organizing spreadsheets, grilling salmon as if it were an Olympic sport. Laughter. Polite at first. Someone coughed awkwardly. She didn't pause. Nathan, whose idea of romance is syncing our calendars. More laughter, louder now. I felt Soraya glance at me, but I kept my eyes on Callista. She went on, joke after joke, tearing apart the things that made up the dull but reliable rhythm of my life. My budgeting habits, my punctuality, even how I arranged the mugs in our kitchen cabinet. Each dig landed like a slap, but not one loud enough to excuse a reaction. She was smiling like she thought this was charming, like she could disguise cruelty as comedy and call it love. Across the table, Lennox smirked. That alone told me what I needed to know. I felt the burn rise in my chest, not of rage, but of recognition. This wasn't just a bad joke. This was a deliberate performance, a public takedown camouflaged as wit. A woman doesn't mock the core of her husband this way unless she's trying to erase him in front of others. I felt exposed, but oddly calm. Callista raised her glass. To Nathan, the man who doesn't make waves. They all drank. I didn't. I stood up. I wasn't loud. I didn't slam a glass or curse or demand respect. I just adjusted my jacket, placed my napkin on the plate, and walked away. Through the golden glow of the chandeliers, through the stunned silence that followed me through the sliding doors, and into the cool April night air. I didn't look back. I didn't take my car. I didn't call a car service. I just walked first down Embarcadero, then through the Mission, all the way until the lights blurred and the noise softened. When I finally stopped walking, it was nearly midnight. I found myself on the edge of the marina watching boats rock gently in their slips. I sat on a bench and let the silence wrap around me. That was the night I left. Not just the party, not just Callista. I left the version of myself that had tolerated the slow erosion of dignity disguised as civility. I left behind the man who thought enduring meant loving that patience could mend what arrogance had torn. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't even go home. Instead, I checked into a quiet lodge 2 hours north in Napa Valley, a place we used to go when life was simpler, before Callista rebranded us into someone else's version of success. That first night in Napa, I ordered nothing but a cup of hot black tea and sat in silence. No phone, no emails. Just me. By morning, I had already called my private attorney. "Begin the process," I said. No confrontation, no letters, just repositioning. He didn't ask why. He had seen Callista in action before. Over the next few days, I did not rage. I didn't call Callista or demand explanations. I let the silence do what words never could. I began untangling myself quietly, methodically. I changed access codes, revoked proxies, froze unnecessary accounts. I reviewed every estate document, every trust. I rewrote the narrative, but not on paper. In silence. Callista tried calling 3 days later. I didn't answer. Lennox called once, then not again. It took them a full week to realize I was gone, not on a trip, not hiding, just absent. And in that absence, everything they assumed was theirs began to tremble. Back in San Francisco, Callista played it off, at least publicly. She hosted another brunch, wore louder dresses, louder smiles. But the bank calls started, the legal notifications, the closed doors, the missing passwords. Soraya texted me. "Dad, where are you? What's going on?" I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't love her, but because I needed her to feel what silence sounds like. I didn't vanish in the dramatic sense. No one changed their Facebook status to missing, no police report was filed. But I disappeared in all the ways that mattered. I turned off my phone, booked a room at a Vineyard Inn just outside Sonoma, under a different name, and left everything behind except for my silence. Callista didn't call. Not once. That didn't surprise me. We'd been coexisting more than living for the past 2 years. What surprised me was how easy it was for the world to accept my absence. My absence was convenient. No questions, no noise. But my silence. That was another story. I had time now, time to observe. And in that stillness, I saw things I hadn't allowed myself to see before. I didn't just walk away from a marriage. I walked away from a carefully curated illusion, one that had been crumbling for longer than I cared to admit. From my suite, I read reports from our joint holdings, scanned emails forwarded by my attorney, and tracked the slow tremble in our financial foundation, like a seismologist watching fault lines form. I didn't lash out. I didn't leak stories. I simply restructured quietly. Everything that bore my name began to shift. Trust accounts, real estate deeds, investment portfolios. My signature disappeared from boards and contracts. I sold the condo in Miami without blinking. I liquidated a vacation home in Telluride that Callista hadn't set foot in for years. Every piece of the empire we'd built together, I began peeling away layer by layer like old wallpaper. Callista didn't notice at first. The woman who mocked me at my own birthday party was too busy living in the center of her new performance. She'd moved Lennox into the guest wing of the house within a week of my disappearance. I heard it from Melissa, our housekeeper, who had loyally texted me updates, careful not to use any language that might trigger legal issues. "Looks like Mr. Lennox has taken over your cigar humidor," she wrote. "Do you want me to clear it?" I told her no. Let him keep the cigars. Let him take the chairs, the scotch collection, the theater system. Let him settle in. Let her think she'd won. Because I knew what they didn't. I hadn't left because I was weak. I'd left because I was finally strong enough to stop performing. For decades, I'd been the provider, the strategist, the husband who stayed out of the social media spotlight and made sure every photo Callista posted had a perfect backdrop, an exotic island, a vintage car, a diamond necklace. She loved props. Lennox was just her latest one. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was methodical. Over the next 3 weeks, I met with estate planners, realigned trust structures, and replaced every joint account with solo entities. Legally, everything I did was above board, but strategically, it was brutal. I didn't remove Callista from what she was owed. I simply made her aware of what she had never really owned. She started noticing when her card stopped working. I got the first call from her attorney, not her. "Mr. Carter," he said with rehearsed politeness, "there's some confusion regarding account access. Callista believes there's been a banking error." "There's no error," I said. "Just a rebalancing. She'd prefer to handle this amicably. I'm sure she would." Then I turned off the machine. I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was trying to give her a mirror. But the thing about people like Callista is that they hate mirrors unless they're tilted at the perfect angle. Lennox, on the other hand, was enjoying his rise. He was a junior partner in a boutique PR firm known more for flash than substance. Suddenly he had access to media contacts, luxury events, and a woman whose last name still opened doors. He started posting more smiling beside her at rooftop galas, calling her Queen C, like she was a brand and not a person. What he didn't realize was that everything she flaunted was in my name, or once had been. I didn't watch it all out of bitterness. I watched it the way a chess player studies his opponent. Quiet. Still. Predicting moves before they were made. Then came the fundraiser. Every year, Callista hosted a benefit for a pediatric cancer nonprofit. It was her crown jewel, a night of gowns, camera flashes, and thinly veiled social competition. The guest list was curated, the lighting was calculated, and the photos always hit the society pages by sunrise. That year, I didn't show up, but my absence was louder than any speech I could have made. I had quietly informed the nonprofit board 2 weeks prior that I was withdrawing all future funding under my name. I also informed them that the event was being misrepresented financially by a third-party vendor, namely Lennox's PR firm. I didn't accuse them publicly. I simply provided documentation and asked that it be reviewed by their audit team. The event went ahead. But halfway through the night, as Callista was giving her toast about resilience and family values, a board member pulled her aside. Then another. Guests began whispering. The photographers pulled back. And Lennox? He vanished before dessert was served. The next morning, Callista's face wasn't in the papers. The event was pulled from all coverage due to pending internal review. Her platform cracked. Her halo dimmed. I didn't smile. I just kept moving. Back at the vineyard, I received an email from Soraya. Short. Formal. "Dad, I don't know what's happening, but everything feels wrong." I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. I didn't want to tell her what her mother had done. I didn't want to weaponize the truth, but I also wasn't going to let her drown in someone else's lies. I wrote back, "Sometimes silence is the only way to speak without shouting. I'll explain when you're ready." She didn't reply. But a week later, I got a photo of her at school, no caption. Just her holding a trophy with a tired but proud smile. I saved it. It reminded me why I was doing all this without theatrics. I wasn't trying to punish Callista. I was trying to reclaim the part of myself that had been sacrificed at the altar of her image. And Soraya deserved to know her father wasn't the joke they made of him. One afternoon, I took a drive into San Francisco and parked 2 blocks from our old penthouse. I didn't go inside. I just watched. The windows were dark. The building was quiet. That place had once been a symbol of everything we'd built: glass, steel, ambition. Now it felt like a museum of a life I no longer missed. I sent one final transfer that day, the deed of the penthouse, to a non-profit that provides transitional housing for women recovering from domestic abuse. Callista would learn about it from her lawyer. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was trying to remind her that some people walk away not because they're weak, but because they've finally stopped begging to be seen. And when you've been invisible long enough, there's power in silence. By the time the financial statements arrived at her door, Callista would understand. She wasn't married to a man who left. She was married to a man who unhooked the stage lights and let the curtain fall on its own. The fallout didn't arrive like a thunderstorm. It arrived like a slow leak, impossible to plug once it began. In the weeks following the fundraiser debacle, Callista went from society darling to subject of hushed whispers. Her reputation, once meticulously crafted and fiercely protected, began to fray at the edges. People didn't confront her directly. They never do in her world. They just stopped calling. The silence she once weaponized became a mirror she couldn't escape. What Callista didn't realize, what Lennox definitely didn't realize, was that reputation in elite circles wasn't built on Instagram photos or gala appearances. It was built on trust, discretion, and the subtle unspoken understanding that everything has a price, especially betrayal. And she had just overdrawn. I didn't orchestrate it all for revenge. I wanted truth. But truth, when exposed in the right environment, is corrosive. Once people started talking, they couldn't stop. Heard about what happened at the Carter fundraiser. Apparently Nathan walked away with everything. Lennox is gone, just like that. He was never really in the picture. They weren't just gossiping. They were recalibrating their loyalty. Callista was no longer a reliable brand. I remained invisible. From my quiet perch in Sonoma, I watched as the dominoes fell. Lennox, who had tried to expand his boutique firm by leveraging Callista's name, suddenly found doors closing. Clients rescinded offers. A board seat he was eyeing vanished after a quiet word from an old colleague of mine. He never saw it coming. One evening, while reviewing a property file, I got a message from Melissa again. Lennox moved out. Packed everything. She screamed at him for 3 hours. Said you destroyed her life. I almost laughed, but didn't. I just sat there sipping my tea, letting the words settle. That night I went through a folder I hadn't opened in months. Soraya's drawings from middle school. Crumpled construction paper, glitter, uneven lines. One of them was a family portrait, me, Callista, and Soraya, though in the drawing I was standing outside the house holding a briefcase. Even then she saw the cracks. My daughter's silence was the hardest part. I didn't expect her to pick sides she shouldn't have to, but I'd hoped she would reach out. Instead, she remained distant. Civil. Controlled. She was growing into her mother's image in ways I hadn't anticipated, and I blamed myself. I'd built a fortress of comfort and assumed it would protect her, but it had also hidden her from truth, from conflict, from complexity. The same way I'd hidden myself from the reality of my marriage. I needed to see her. So I drove to her school. Not unannounced, I scheduled it through the administration under the pretense of a parental update. When she walked into the meeting room dressed in her school uniform and carrying a binder-like armor, I saw a version of her I barely recognized. "Hi, Dad," she said, neutral. "Hey, sweetheart." She sat down across from me, arms crossed. "Why now?" Her question was simple. Heavy. "I needed to see you. Not through a screen. Not through attorneys. Just you." She didn't respond. I walked away from the party because I realized something I should have known a long time ago. Your mom stopped loving me years ago, and I kept pretending it was fine. She flinched not from the words, but from the truth behind them. "Why didn't you fight?" she asked. "Why didn't you yell or make her stop?" "Because I was tired of performing." She swallowed. Her eyes shimmered, but didn't break. "I didn't want you to hate her," I said softly. "I just wanted you to see me." "I did," she whispered. "I always did. You just never looked back." Those words gutted me more than anything Calista had ever said. "I'm sorry," I said, voice cracking. I was trying so hard to keep everything intact that I didn't notice what was slipping away. She nodded, then unexpectedly reached into her binder and pulled out a letter. "I wrote this a week after you left. I didn't send it. I unfolded it and read the first line I miss when you used to pick me up from dance class and let me play whatever music I wanted, even the stuff you hated. By the time I finished, I wasn't just reading, I was grieving. I'll be here," I told her. "Whenever you're ready. No more noise, no more pretending." She nodded, hugged me once quickly, and left. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was a beginning. A week later, I received an invitation in my inbox. Soraya's school was hosting a parent-student debate night, topic, the power of speaking up versus staying silent. I showed up early. Calista was there too, sitting in the front row, flawless as ever. She looked surprised to see me. Not angry, just surprised. She leaned over. "Didn't expect you'd come. I told Soraya I'd show up when it mattered." She looked away. "You made your point, Nathan. You won. Are you happy?" "No," I said. "I'm just free." The debate began. Soraya was poised, articulate a force. She argued for the power of silence, how it could expose hypocrisy, protect dignity, create space for truth. When the applause came, it wasn't just for her eloquence. It was for the subtext everyone felt, but didn't say. Afterward, she walked toward me. No words, just a small, knowing smile. Behind her, Calista lingered, unsure whether to follow or retreat. I turned and left without a glance. Let her sit with that silence. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. And clarity, when earned, is louder than any speech. After the school debate, something shifted, not just between Soraya and me, but within me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was reacting to life. I was designing it, piece by piece, quietly, with intention. I didn't move back into the old house. That chapter was closed. Instead, I bought a modest but elegant property on the edge of Mill Valley, the kind of place where mornings start with fog and end in golden light, where the silence feels like a friend instead of a punishment. It had a wraparound porch, creaky floorboards, and wild rosemary growing along the fence. It wasn't glamorous. It was real. And real was enough. I spent the first few weeks fixing things with my hands, window frames, cabinet doors, broken tiles. Things I had paid others to do for years I now did myself. Not because I had to, but because I needed to feel the texture of control again. The simplicity of progress. The quiet made space for something I hadn't touched in years, thought. Reflection. And memories. Memories of late nights in that sterile mansion crunching numbers while Callista scrolled endlessly on her phone pretending to care. Memories of birthdays, when she gave me a sleek new gadget, but not one word of affection. Of the time I proposed we take Soraya to Yosemite, and she scoffed at the idea of sweating in the woods. I let all of it wash through me, not to wallow, to clear the residue. Melissa called one afternoon. "You know Lennox is petitioning for a business loan from your old partner?" I raised an eyebrow. "From Travis." "Yeah. Guess he thought you being gone meant Travis would forget who trained him." "Let him try," I said. "Travis doesn't have a short memory." She laughed. "You know there's a rumor floating around that Lennox is planning to relocate. Something about a fresh start in Austin. Fresh starts are hard when the rot's internal. I wasn't tracking Lennox to retaliate. I just knew men like him. They think they can outrun the wreckage they cause until they realize they're carrying it." That same week I received an unexpected letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It was from Soraya. "Dad, I still don't know where I fit in this. I'm angry, confused, but when I debated on that stage I was thinking of you. I saw how strong silence could be. You walked away with your dignity, and I want to understand how. I want to talk, maybe not now, but soon." I read the letter 5 times, folded it, unfolded it, then placed it in the drawer next to her drawings from years ago. The drawer I now opened often. I didn't push. I didn't call. I waited. In the meantime, the house grew warmer, figuratively and literally. I hosted old friends, cooked meals, played Miles Davis on Sunday mornings, laughed with no cameras. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow healing, the kind that doesn't need an audience. One Thursday evening, I got a knock on the door. Not a call, not a text. A knock. It was Soraya. Wearing jeans hoodie, no makeup. She looked like the teenager I forgot she still was. "Can I come in?" she asked. "Always." We sat on the couch, both holding mugs of herbal tea like we were afraid of spilling something heavier. "I didn't tell Mom," she said. "She still thinks you're the villain. She's entitled to her version," I said. "I'm not here to rewrite it, but I need mine." I let her speak. About the moments she felt invisible. About the nights she heard us arguing through walls. About how confusing it was to love both parents and still feel betrayed by them. When she finished, she leaned into me like she used to when she was little. No words, just wait. "I'm not perfect," I whispered, "but I'll never lie to you again. Even when it's hard." She nodded. "I believe you." That night she stayed in the guest room. The next morning she helped me make breakfast. We burned the pancakes and laughed until we cried. It wasn't repair. It was renewal. Later that day I got another call. This time from Travis. "You'll never guess who's trying to secure PR damage control," he said. "Callista." "Yep. Apparently her brand sponsorships are falling through. The board at the charity pulled her name off the event banner. It's unraveling." I didn't smile. "Not really. She'll survive," I said. "Not without scars. I think we're all meant to carry some." He paused. "You ever think about going back to the firm, to the world? Finance? Power?" I sipped my tea. I'm already there, Travis, just in a different currency. What I meant was I didn't need the corner office anymore. I had rebuilt something sturdier than glass towers myself. Still, I didn't ignore the shifting winds. I knew Callista wouldn't collapse quietly. She'd repackage, rebrand, retaliate. That was her rhythm. Sure enough, a week later I received a legal notice she was contesting our asset division agreement. Claimed emotional duress. Wanted to reopen the settlement. I met my lawyer downtown in a beige conference room that smelled like sterile air and overpriced coffee. "She's grasping," he said. "We'll fight it. But it may get messy." "Let it," I replied. "I'm not afraid of mess anymore." I walked out of that office and into the sunlight, pulse steady. The man who once flinched at confrontation now welcomed clarity, no matter how sharp its edge. I drove to Soraya's school that afternoon and waited outside. When she spotted me, she smiled. "You look taller," she joked. "I feel taller." She got in the car and we drove in silence, comfortable silence. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To get ice cream and to talk about your summer plans." She grinned. "You know I'm not 12 anymore, right?" "Yeah," I said. "But some traditions are worth keeping." As we pulled onto the freeway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. No shadows. No ghosts. Just road. And for the first time in a long, long while, it felt like mine again. I didn't attend the charity gala. The one Callista had once ruled like a queen in sapphire gowns and diamonded smiles. But I heard about it. How the lights flickered midway through her speech. How the applause was tepid. How Lennox showed up late and left early, ignoring her entirely. The empire she had curated not with care, but with cunning, was starting to fracture. Melissa sent me screenshots of online comments. A growing thread titled "Callista's Fall from Grace" had hundreds of shares. Whispers about misuse of funds, blurred lines in her foundation sponsorships, withdrawing one by one. Still, I stayed out of it. I wasn't the one pulling strings or feeding stories. I was just living. Quietly. Confidently. But then Callista came to me. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I'd just gotten back from a hike with Soraya, our new Sunday-turned-weekday tradition when school schedules allowed it. The knock on the door was sharp, not hesitant. She hadn't changed. When I opened it, she stood there in a tailored cream suit, sunglasses perched on her head like she'd just stepped out of a photo shoot. But her eyes, those once unreadable camera-trained eyes, were glassy. "I need to talk," she said. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in like she still owned the air in the room, then paused when she saw the space. It was nothing like our old home, smaller, more lived in, more real. Her gaze lingered on the photo of Soraya and me by the fireplace. A shot from a farmer's market, both of us holding smoothies and laughing like fools. "This is where you ended up," she said, not mockingly, but almost surprised. "This is where I began again," I replied. She sat on the edge of the couch, posture rigid. I sat across from her and waited. She took a breath. "Everything's falling apart. The board wants to audit the foundation. Sponsors are ghosting me. And Lennox?" She paused. "He's pulling away." I said nothing. "He's talking about moving to Austin. Said the Bay's too saturated." But I think her voice cracked just slightly. "I think he's trying to disappear. Would that surprise you?" She flinched, barely. "You think I deserve this?" "I think actions catch up to people. Eventually." She looked down at her hands. "You were always so clean, so moral. It used to bore me. I wasn't moral," I said. "I was loyal. There's a difference." We sat in silence, the kind that hums with everything unspoken. "I miss Soraya," she finally said. "She misses who you used to be. She doesn't answer my calls. She doesn't know what's real with you anymore." Callista leaned back, shoulders slumping for the first time in years. I thought if I controlled the narrative, I'd control the outcome. That as long as I looked untouchable, I'd be safe. You mistook attention for security. She blinked slowly. You're different now. I stopped performing. She looked at me, eyes searching for something familiar. So this is who you really are. No, I said. This is who I fought to become. She stood. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I know. Her voice dropped. I wanted to look you in the eye before everything burns. And then she left. No apology, no plea. Just smoke before the collapse. The legal war began quietly. Her new lawyers tried to portray our divorce agreement as imbalanced, claimed she signed under emotional pressure despite clear documentation and months of mediated negotiation. They wanted a new financial review, more assets, retroactive compensation. But my team was ready. Every email, every timeline, every transfer. Melissa called one morning, her voice dry with humor. They want access to your business records. For what? To prove you hid earnings. They were always in the books. Yeah, she said. But Callista's betting no one reads footnotes. The first court session was clinical. No fireworks. Just legalese and strategy. Callista sat 2 tables away, flanked by high-end attorneys, who looked more like influencers than litigators. She didn't meet my eyes. Soraya didn't come. I didn't ask her to. After the session, as we exited into the parking lot, I saw Callista hesitating by her car. She looked tired, worn down in a way that Botox couldn't hide. I'm not trying to ruin you, she said. Then stop digging. She hesitated. I don't know how to lose. That's why you never really won. She opened her car door, paused again. If I lose this case, I lose everything. No, I said. You lose the illusion. The rest was never yours to begin with. 2 weeks later, the financial audit of her foundation became public. An anonymous leak, one I wasn't involved in, circulated documents pointing to questionable practices and blurry donation paths. Social media erupted. Influencers distanced themselves. Brands paused campaigns. The board issued a statement about restructuring. And Lennox, he vanished. Deleted his socials. Closed his digital marketing firm. Rumor had it he moved to Arizona under a different name. Typical. Soraya found out at school. She called me from the campus library, voice low. Is it bad to feel relieved? No, I said. It's honest. She did this to herself, didn't she? She made choices. And life collected. Later that night she came by again. We sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, sipping cocoa like it was winter. I remember when I thought Mom was perfect, she said. We all believe in fairy tales before we live through the fire. She looked at me. You ever think she could change? I looked up at the stars. Anyone can change. But not everyone wants to. We sat there for a long while, letting the quiet speak. Then she asked the question I didn't expect. Why didn't you ever fight back harder? Because revenge is loud, but peace is permanent. She didn't say anything. But I saw something shift in her face. Like a gear finally clicked into place. The final court hearing was brief. The judge denied Callista's appeal, cited lack of evidence, stable agreements, and no signs of coercion. Her legal team deflated. She didn't argue. She just sat there stone-faced as the gavel came down. Afterward, I didn't linger. I didn't wait for confrontation, but outside she caught up. I lost, she said flat. No, I replied. You were seen. She swallowed. So what now? I just fade. That's up to you. She looked at me for a long time. You're not the man I married, No, I said. I'm the man I should have been all along. And then I left, again. But this time it wasn't a quiet exit. It was a conclusion. A month later, I hosted a small dinner, just a few close friends, Soraya and Travis. Laughter filled the house. Real, unfiltered laughter. Melissa brought wine. Soraya made a playlist. We toasted to new beginnings. No speeches, no spotlights. Just a table where no one was a punchline. After everyone left, Soraya helped me clear the dishes. "You okay, Dad?" "I'm more than okay." She nodded, then hesitated. "I'm proud of you." That hit deeper than any verdict. Later, as I stood alone by the sink, watching the lights flicker in the yard, I felt it. Closure. Not with drama, not with spectacle, but with stillness, with truth, with the quiet power of a man who had lost everything and rebuilt it, not louder, but stronger. The silence after a storm isn't peace. It's just a new kind of noise. After the court ruling, after the headlines cooled and the gossip circles moved on to newer scandals, I expected life to feel lighter. Like the tension would lift, the air would change, and the world would start spinning in my favor. But trauma has its own gravity. It lingers in the bones, a dull ache that doesn't scream but hums. Callista was no longer part of my daily life. Legally, financially, socially, we were cut clean. The last transaction had been processed, the final email archived. But absence doesn't equal closure. It just leaves space for questions to echo. Sometimes I'd find myself checking the news, wondering if she'd rebound. Other times I'd remember moments from the old life laughs that now felt artificial dinners where silence was thicker than sauce. The images came and went without invitation. That's the thing about betrayal. It becomes part of your reflex memory. But Soraya, she was different. She moved through the weeks like someone who'd been waiting her whole life to breathe freely. She started journaling, more sketching again. Her art had always been sharp and moody during the Callista years. Now there was softness. One night I passed by her room and found her painting. The canvas was streaked with blues and burnt oranges, the kind of colors that only come from acceptance. "Looks peaceful," I said, leaning against the doorway. She turned and smiled. "It feels like it." I didn't push. I just stood there watching her create a world that didn't need fixing. One morning, Melissa dropped by with coffee and folders. She looked sharper than usual, like she'd walked out of a power brunch. "You're trending," she said as she walked in. I raised an eyebrow. "For what? The op-ed you wrote for the Chronicle. It's everywhere." "Ah, yes. I had forgotten that was going live today. A piece titled, 'Why Walking Away is Sometimes the Strongest Move.' I hadn't planned on publishing anything, but after everything, the public exposure, the private trauma, it felt necessary. Not as revenge, but as reclamation." "You're being called a quiet force," Melissa said, sipping her latte. "That just means I didn't throw plates on reality TV." She laughed. "People relate to your restraint, to your silence. It's louder than drama." I shrugged. Silence is honest. She paused. "So, you gonna date again?" I looked at her amused. "That's quite the segue. You've got offers, trust me. I've seen your DMs. I'm not a headline. I'm a father, a builder. You can be both." I thought about that. Maybe later. Weeks turned into a couple of months. The whispers about Callista faded. Her social media went dark. No new posts, no brand deals, no staged smiles. A few smaller publications published follow-ups, quotes from anonymous sources about how the queen lost her kingdom. But I didn't gloat. I didn't screenshot anything. I didn't smile when the world turned against her. I didn't need to. I had already won. Not in court, not in public, but in the quiet rhythm of a life rebuilt. I took Soraya on a weekend trip to Big Sur. Just the two of us. No distractions, no agendas. On the second night, as we sat on a cliff, watching the waves crush below, she said something that rooted itself in me. "You didn't punish her," she said, "but she still lost." I nodded. "Some people punish themselves better than anyone else ever could." She looked at me. "I think that's why I forgive you." That caught me off guard. For what? For staying so long. For letting her talk to me like I was invisible. I breathed in slowly. "I thought I was protecting you, by keeping things stable." "I know," she whispered, "but I needed you to protect me loudly." The wind picked up, pushing her hair across her face. "I'm trying," I said. "I promise I'm trying." She leaned into my side. "You're doing better." The next Monday, I received a letter. Not a typed notice. Not a legal document. A handwritten envelope with no return address. I recognized the handwriting before I opened it. Inside was a single-page letter. No greeting. Just, "I don't know who I am without an audience." I thought that meant I was lost. But maybe it means I'm finally free. If you ever find a version of me worth knowing again, I hope it's not too late. No apology, no blame, just something like honesty. I folded it carefully and placed it in my drawer, not out of sentiment, but as a marker. A final chapter sealed. That night, I slept without waking. A few weeks later, Travis and I were grabbing lunch when a woman approached our table. "Excuse me," she said, holding her phone. I assumed she wanted directions or maybe had mistaken us for someone else. I just wanted to say she continued. "Your article changed the way I handled my own separation." Travis raised his eyebrows. She smiled at me genuinely. "You reminded me that we can leave without rage, that leaving itself can be sacred." I thanked her, shaken in the best way. After she walked away, Travis leaned in. "You're a damn guru now." I rolled my eyes. "I'm just tired of silence being mistaken for weakness." He nodded. "Well, whatever you're doing, it's working." That fall, Soraya applied for a scholarship to an art program in New York. When she showed me her portfolio, I barely recognized the girl in the strokes, confident, bold, whimsical. "They'll be lucky to have you," I said. "I used to think art was the only way I could scream," she replied. "Now it feels like breathing." We submitted the application together. Later that week, we took a walk through a local gallery. One of the curators, an older woman named Camila, struck up a conversation with Soraya. After Soraya left to view another exhibit, Camila turned to me. "She's got vision, not just technique. Depth." I know I said with more pride than I could contain. She tilted her head. "Raised by you." "Co-raised," I admitted. "But the part that's resilient, that's me." Thanksgiving came, and for the first time in years, it wasn't awkward. No curated guests, no PR photographers, just family chosen and blood. Melissa, Travis, a few of Soraya's friends, dishes that were slightly overcooked, and music that was too loud. And laughter, real, unstoppable laughter. At one point, Soraya leaned over and said, "This is what home should have always felt like." I agreed. Then, out of nowhere, Callista resurfaced. Not in headlines, not on screen, but at the grocery store. Soraya and I were picking up ingredients for a last-minute pasta night. I spotted her first in the wine aisle, looking at a bottle she used to serve at our parties. She looked ordinary. Plain blouse, no heels, no entourage, no gloss. She saw us at the same time. I felt Soraya tense next to me, but I didn't move. Callista walked over slowly. "Hi," she said, quietly. I nodded. "Hey," she turned to Soraya. "You look beautiful." Soraya didn't respond. Callista cleared her throat. "I'm not here to cause anything. I just wanted you both to know I'm moving. Out of state. New job. Low profile." I waited. "I know sorry doesn't fix it," she added. "No," I said. "It doesn't. But it still matters." She met my eyes. "You were always the better one." I shook my head. "No. I just stopped being worse." Soraya stepped forward then. "Just a little." "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said, her voice even. Callista blinked. "So do I." And then she left. No spectacle. No breakdown. Just a woman finally stepping off her stage. Back home, Soraya was quiet. "You okay?" I asked as we unpacked. "I think so," she said. "It just feels weird seeing her like that. Like what human? That sat with me. We'd spent so long villainizing her, defining her by the damage she left. But time has a way of shrinking monsters down to people. Imperfect. Misguided. Small. And in a strange way that made healing easier. That night I wrote another piece. Not an op-ed. Just a journal entry. Sometimes strength looks like survival. Other times it looks like forgiveness. But the strongest version, it looks like indifference. When you no longer need revenge. When you don't wish harm. When you can say, "I'm good," and mean it, that's when you've really won. The first morning I truly felt free didn't begin with fireworks or epiphanies. It began with oatmeal and quiet. Soraya had left early to visit her friend's art studio. The house was still. No echo of tension, no unspoken arguments hiding in the walls. Just silence, real this time, not the kind born of people avoiding each other. I sat by the kitchen window, watching the soft morning light stretch across the marble counters, and I realized this peace wasn't sudden. It had been earned inch by inch. Everything that once defined me had crumbled, and what was left the person sitting at this table wasn't lesser. He was sharper, more deliberate. I had nothing left to prove. And that was its own kind of wealth. Later that afternoon, I walked into the new office space. It was still under renovation, scattered cables, exposed beams, the buzz of drills, but it was mine. A boutique firm with no intention of going public. No need to impress investors, just built with people who wanted to create, not perform. Travis joined me halfway through the walkthrough. "I still can't believe you passed on the Vegas deal," he said, handing me a hard hat. "I've gambled enough," I replied. He chuckled. "You've changed. Didn't have much of a choice." He gave me a look. "No, man, you chose differently. Big difference." I nodded. Maybe that's what made all the difference in the end. Not what life handed me, but what I handed back. That night, Soraya came home with paint on her cheek and excitement in her eyes. "I got in," she said, holding out her phone. The email was there in black and white. She'd been accepted into the New York program. Full scholarship. I stood up and hugged her longer than she expected. There was so much I could say, but all I managed was, "You did it." Her voice was muffled against my shoulder. We did, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was giving her something I never had. A clean slate. We sat together later on the balcony, watching the city breathe. "You know," she said, "there was a version of me that used to think you were weak." I looked at her. She continued. "Not because you cried or forgave or stayed, but because you didn't fight the way TV dads do. Dramatic, loud, dangerous. I smiled. And now I see how hard it is to keep building after someone breaks everything. I let that sit between us. I still get angry, she said. So do I. But I don't hate her anymore, she added. I'm just done carrying her. She turned toward me. And I think you are too. I was. On Soraya's last night before leaving for New York, we cooked together. Badly. The pasta was overcooked. The garlic bread burned. But we laughed so hard we didn't care. After dinner, she handed me a framed sketch. It was the two of us. Me holding a hammer standing beside her while she painted on a wall that looked half-built. It's called reconstruction, she said. It's not finished. But neither are we. I didn't cry, but I did feel something crack open inside me, a new kind of healing. The airport goodbye was short. Soraya never liked dragging out moments. I'll text you when I land, she said, adjusting her backpack. Not if I text first. She smiled, then hesitated. Hey, Dad. Yeah, you didn't just survive all that. You showed me how to. I didn't know what to say, so I just watched her walk away upright and steady. Weeks passed, then months. The firm took off. Quietly, efficiently. No celebrity clients, no chaos. Just meaningful work with people I respected. The house was quieter now. Too quiet sometimes. But in the spaces where tension once lived, there was now room for other things, books I'd been meaning to read, dinners with friends, long walks without purpose. I didn't date. Not seriously. I wasn't opposed to it. I just wasn't searching. I was still rebuilding this time not out of necessity, but intention. One Sunday, I received a message from a mutual acquaintance of Callista's. She's remarried, it read. To a banker. Low-key ceremony. Small town in Vermont. I stared at the screen for a moment. No bitterness, no curiosity. Just neutrality. A few years ago, that news would have gutted me, or infuriated me. Now it was just another fact in a world full of them. I deleted the message without responding. Sometimes I'm asked if I ever miss the old life. The lavish parties, the press events, the illusion of invincibility. And the truth, no. Because back then I was only half of myself. Now I'm whole, not perfect, not invulnerable, but real. There's a bench I go to now. It overlooks the lake. Quiet, humble. Some days I bring a journal. Other days just coffee. But every time I sit with the man I've become, the one who walked out when it mattered, who let go without yelling, who didn't need to burn things down to start over, and that I've learned is the loudest kind of power there is. Still standing, still whole, and finally truly free. In life, the deepest betrayals rarely come with explosions. They arrive in laughter at your expense. Silence when you needed protection, or in the quiet unraveling of someone you once trusted. But it is in those moments, hollow and shaking, that we are offered something rare, the chance to reclaim ourselves. Walking away is often mistaken for weakness. In truth, it requires strength beyond measure. The strength to resist revenge. The strength to face the unknown. And most of all, the strength to rebuild with nothing but your own dignity intact. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It whispers through calm mornings, steady decisions, and lives lived with purpose. The most complete victories aren't shouted from rooftops. They unfold slowly in the quiet, knowing that you didn't lose yourself to pain or pride. In the end, healing doesn't always look like grand gestures. Sometimes it's the simple peace of no longer carrying what broke you. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences matter here. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that speaks to the heart. Until next time, take care.